thought I would pop on and do a book review because this book that I'm reading is so great. I'm rereading it. I've read it before. It's called Pendulum. It's by Roy Williams and Michael Drew. They're in advertising. And the book itself speaks on patterns that society follows. And so their premise is that society follows an 80-year pattern, and they call it a pendulum. So it swings one way, gets back to center, swings another way. And they have the two peaks would be the we and the me. And some of you who really know me have heard me talk about this because I find it to be so fascinating. And these are like opposite ends of the spectrum. And to be honest, both sides have really great benefits and both sides have really bad, like too much of a good thing. So on the we side of things, think of collectives and united we stand, and think of doing things for the greater good, service. And so he gives a list of what defines each pinnacle. And then you have the me side of things, which is more hero-centered and individualistic, and what can I do to better myself versus what can I do to help society, which would be the we. But just like in anything, you can have too much of a good thing. And so at the height of a we, you get into things like witch hunts, like I'm okay, but you're not okay. Where at the height of the me, you get into hero worship and you're okay, but I'm not okay. And you know, that leads to, you can think about through the 80s, which was the peak of the me, previously was 83, I think. And so you have huge self-esteem issues and idolization. Then you hit 2003, which would be the center, and then you went up. And we're heading towards the peak of a we movement, which would be in 23. And you see it. You see the witch hunts happening. You see the cancel culture and people being afraid to speak anything or say anything for fear of offending someone. And so there are good things about the place we're in society, and caring about others, and humility and thoughtfulness, and doing small actions to make changes. These are all great things, but then we take it too far and we start to literally look under every rock and everything to find whatever we're looking for that doesn't seem to conform to the ideals we want to hold. And you see that happening. And so it's just a very fascinating book. It goes through and gives the historical context. It kind of starts in the previous we cycle, which would have peaked in 1943, so that was during World War II, or right around that time, and then it would have gone down. 63 would have been your middle, and then you would have gone on up into the 80s. And so you think about it, they're two different voices, and they speak to us in different ways. So when we get to this part of the we where we're at, I wanted to read this. It's kind of very interesting. It says, when we take a thing too far, so at the pinnacle of a we, or right at that cusp, and then right after that cusp, you have personal liberties are stripped away, self-righteousness, duty, obligation, and sacrifice. Think legalism. Secretly, you're dissatisfied. You long for freedom, regimentation, process smothers innovation, and claustrophobic and oppressive. And I think that's where our society is headed. We don't know how to have fun. We are afraid to offend anyone, and you have people literally looking for any fault they can find to cancel you because you're not conforming to what they feel is right. And so we'll hit the peak of that. It's going to be a little bit longer, but we'll hit the peak of that, and we'll slowly start to come down. And then by, 2033, you start to hear new voices going out on journeys and adventures, and going back to finding that individualistic lifestyle, that freedom that we've missed because we've been so caught up in this we collective. Back in the 50s, that those beginning voices would have been like a Jack Kerouac, is what the book says, and that just longing for adventure and going off and finding who you are. And so anyway, that's long for Instagram, I guess, and Facebook post, but I wanted to promote this book is an interesting thing to read if you are like, what in the world is going on with society? King Solomon said there is nothing new under the sun, and there certainly is not. And this book just tends to show you the cycles that society goes in, at least in the West. Their thesis is that the East, Asia, I think those cultures have the opposite. So right now, Asian cultures would be in the upswing of a me, and vice versa for us. So it's very interesting. I feel like it answers questions that are going on in our society right now very clearly. It's not some crystal ball type of predictive book. It's more just observations of what has happened in society and what is happening. And this book was written in 2012, so it does have some things in it that probably are a bit outdated in their predictions for what would be happening right around now. But it's still fascinating. For instance, think about it this way. In the 90s, and the downswing of a me, meaning we were heading the opposite direction, you had shows like Friends, where today I've seen multiple posts where people are horrified that we enjoyed and watched that show because of some of the content it has. Because why? Our attitudes have changed. What society has said is acceptable has changed. And now we are on the upswing of a different, and in some ways they're right. That was, to go that way wasn't always the best. But now we've gone past and we're just like canceling everything, which is never good either, because like I said, it leads to witch hunts. And literally, if you look back in time at the 1600s, the witch hunts in Salem and those types of things happened during a wee trend. And so it's just very fascinating, something to look into. Anyway, that's all. I'm reading this. It's very interesting.